This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 110 of the Dressage Radio Show, brought to you with the generous support of Equestrian Collections and Kentucky Performance Products. Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and my co-host on the show this week is Brett Parbury, joining me from Australia before he leaves the Southern Hemisphere for a while. Brett, how have you been?
I've been well, Chris. I'm just in the throes of packing my stuff now to head over to Europe and compete Lord of Loxley, so a little bit crazy at the moment, but it's been we've been going very well up until now.
Good. Well, let's talk about what you're doing, because later on I want to talk about what you're going to be doing when you get to Europe. We'll come to that a little bit later on, but it's been a few weeks since you were on the show, and it was just before the Sydney CDI, I think you were last here, Brett. So how did that go? And I think Penny had a good place. How did you go?
Yeah, it was good. I had a good Grand Prix. I did a personal best in the Grand Prix, 71 something. I can't remember the final percentage, but set a new Australian record, so I was very happy with that. And then Rachel Santa picked me in the special. I just had a few too many mistakes. I had a problem with my 110 for the whole weekend, which sort of has gone as quick as it came, which cost me marks in the special, and Rachel beat me in that. And then in the freestyle that night, Rachel also beat me in that too. So we've got a great competition here going between Rachel Santa and myself, which is it's great for the domestic front as far as Australian dressage goes. It's good that the best two competitors for Australia at this moment are based in Australia. So Rachel and I push each other along, and hopefully we can keep doing that up until next year, until we have to get serious going towards London.
Well, it's got to be good for both of you, isn't it, to have that kind of competition going on, to just keep pushing each other, as you say, keep raising the bar there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we all know that competition makes people stronger, and it's great that we can have something like that here. I mean, that's why the Europeans are so strong. It's just competition makes them keep lifting the bar. So for Rachel and I to do it at home is great for our sport here, and it's great for a lot of reasons. It's great for the federation to market the challenge between us, and it's great for us because we're good friends and we don't mind. I mean, we understand the sport enough to know that it's not us we're competing against, it's ourselves, really, like it's not each other. So, yeah, we're very, very happy with the way it is.
You know, that's a nice point there that you raised, that it isn't about a competition between two riders, although those scores are competing. It is about your own personal journey with that individual horse, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I mean, to know that Rachel's going to be doing tests over 70, it just makes me sharper on my preparations. It doesn't make me, it's not a one-on-one competition. It just makes me prepare better and brings out the best in myself and my horse. So that's what we want, and that's going towards London. That's what we want to do. We've got a very strong plan as an Australian team that we'd like to have, two and perhaps even three people that can go over 70% in London, and that would be a great result for us.
All the while we're watching the rise and rise of Australian dressage, which is very exciting, to watch, I'm sure, from an Australian standpoint, but also from outside of Australia, watching that standard being elevated constantly, and that sharp competition, the exposure to European competition as well in your preparation. And we're going to be talking to Chantal Wigan a little bit later on, because, of course, you know her so well, and she's been having such great success down there in recent weeks. She's been on a roll, actually. Now, what else has happened, Brett, then, since Sydney? What else have you been doing?
I don't know, to be honest. It's like a blur for me. I live life pretty quickly at the moment. It's trying to run a few different angles to my business. As far as I like coaching, and I do a lot of coaching, and I've got an involvement with Australian eventing program as the dressage advisor to the program, so that keeps me very busy. We've just had the Melbourne 3-day event, and not only that, I do a lot of reviewing of tests of our English-based riders, so I spend a fair bit of time on YouTube watching them ride and trying to keep close to what they're doing, and so that if they need my help, I'll be available. So, I mean, as far as competitions go, it's a little bit of a quiet time at the moment for us. The competition season really builds up virtually from September onwards, from the end of September onwards. So, to be honest, I'm just consolidating a bit at the moment and giving my horses some really solid training and trying to move the younger horses through to the next level and trying to keep Victory Salute ticking over. I mean, for him, it's more about keeping fit and fresh and healthy than anything else, and then trying to have him ready to go for the end of the year. So it's because we don't have CDIs every second week or every third week here, we really have to plan our competition year out quite well and make sure that we don't have the horses peaking at the wrong time. And that's something I've learned through trial and error. And because I'm not running around doing a lot of CDIs with him this year, there was one down in Melbourne last week, and I'm just avoiding travel as much as I can. I mean, every time you put a horse on a truck or put a horse on a plane or put them on an unfamiliar surface, you're risking the horse to some extent. And for us, it's to try and just reduce all risk to him until the end of the year, and then try and take him to more shows, and then try and work towards a good performance at the end of the year to try and get the ticket back for the World Cup final back in Europe next year. And then the Australian selection process is going to be in Europe next year, so we'll all be based back over there for the European summer season.
Well, I mentioned the interest in Australian dressage, and we should give a shout out to everybody in Australia who follows this show, Brett, because it's our second largest audience on the Dressage Radio
right?
Show. It absolutely is in Australia.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of people have stopped me and said, "Oh, I love it on the show," and so it's great. I mean, we do have a wonderful support base here, and there's a lot of dressage enthusiasts out there. So that doesn't surprise me that it's the second biggest, because we're a very horse-oriented country, and dressage is one of our smallest sports, and out of the whole equestrian scene here. But the people who are into it are very, very, very keen, and great to hear that they're behind us. And you can certainly feel it that they're behind us whenever you go to a big event. The crowd's full of Australians.
Cheering you on, no doubt. Well, that's terrific. Well, we're going to hear a little bit more about what's happening down under, and also what you're going to be doing next, coming up here on the show shortly. And our first guest is going to be Chantal Wigan, our guest this week. That is right after this reminder about Kentucky Performance Products, one of our generous sponsors here on the show, because it's that time of year when your horse will be sweating more and needs some help in replenishing fluids. KPP offers a solution with Summer Games Electrolyte. It's originally created for horses competing at the Olympic Games. This formulation is a combination of minerals similar to the levels typically lost in sweat. Summer Games is a concentrated electrolyte that contains minimal sugar and supports normal hydration. Plus, it's palatable and easy to feed. So help your horse beat the heat with Summer Games Electrolyte. And you can find out more about this and all of the KPP products by visiting them online at kppusa.com or call 1-800-772-1988. And you can learn more about horse nutrition too and interact with the KPP experts by joining their Facebook fan page. And KPP is a participating retailer here of the Horse World Gives Back campaign. Well, I mentioned, Brett, Chantal Wigan, I should say, has had a fantastic run of it. She got 3 consecutive wins out there recently, but she comes all the way from up in Queensland. That's a lot of travelling, as you said. It's a huge amount of travelling from where you are in New South Wales to go anywhere, but she has to come all the way down from Brisbane, and she did that recently to go to Melbourne, and now she's again another competitor that you know well over there.
Yeah, no, I know Chantal well. She's a great competitor and has a great horse, and she's prepared to. She really wants to get in and travel and do the CDIs here and she's been based in Europe for the past, I'm actually not sure exactly, but I know that certainly the past 3 to 5 years, and I think it's good for her to get out and do some of the Australian shows and let the Australian public get to meet her.
Well, we're giving you the opportunity to get to know Chantal now, and so let's get her on the line. Chantal, welcome, and thank you for joining us all the way from, near Brisbane, aren't you? You're in a pretty nice spot there in Cleveland. You're close to the coast, so a lot of our listeners would envy you of your location.
Yes, we are extremely close to the coast, and being that close to the coast, we managed to avoid the Brisbane flooding.
Yeah, because you had it pretty badly up there, didn't you? When you did you and all the horsey area up there, did you manage to escape that devastation?
Probably about 60% of them were actually in the devastation, unfortunately, because they were close to the Brisbane River and surrounding Lockyer Valley, which is quite a big horse area. It's further out from Brisbane, so we're sort of close to the city, and if you're close to the coast, well, flooding doesn't affect. So it was. It did have a little effect on our riders, but not too much.
Now, you know your way around this area. This is the area you were born and raised, isn't it? So you haven't strayed too far from home.
No, I haven't gone too far. Had a lot of trips overseas to Germany and to Holland and England, but always managed to come back here. It's a good place.
Well, as you say, we're going to talk about Europe and the time that you've spent over there, gathering a lot of very, obviously, helpful and experience in your career. And you've had a very good run at your career just recently, haven't you? What is it, 3 CDI wins on the trot?
Yes, I think that would be right. Yes, that's sounding correct. We've had quite a good run with that. We're very confirmed in our Grand Prix work. Rivaldi and I, his name's Rivaldi, but in the show we call him Ferrero. But he was a Dutch horse, so he was, he's just 13 years old now, so it's working out really good for us. We've been a partnership now for 4 years.
All right. And where did you find him then? Was that on a European trip?
No, I was based over in Europe from 2006 was my second trip over there, and I was there for 2 years, and he was found in Warendorf, actually, and then we spent 6 more months in Germany, and then I went to Holland with Imke.
Imke Schellekens-Bartels, of course, yeah, the Academy Bartels there in the Netherlands. Tell us about that. How did you get to Europe in the first place? Where were you going to, and where were you going to be based and to begin that European exposure?
Well, I used to work in Germany back in 95 to 97 in Germany under Rudolf Seilinger. And when I went back, of course, which was just under 10 years later, went back there with a horse from Australia because my aim was for Hong Kong. And we spent 6 months working with the horse that I bought from Australia, and he just wasn't going to make the grade. So we decided that we were going to keep up with the campaign for Hong Kong, and we went looking for another horse. So that was how that started. And then I sort of stayed there until probably, I think, about, would have been July of 2007. And then I moved, first of all, to London because I took a break and I have an eventing friend there. And then after that, I did some more research to where I'd like to go next. Trainer-wise, and then we went to Bartels. Now,
has it always been dressage that you've been focusing on, Chantal, or have you had a dab at eventing? Did I read somewhere that you did do some eventing?
Yes. I think every Australian does eventing and a bit of show jumping and a bit of something else before they really find what they like. It was in actually 94 that I sort of was over in England at that time doing some horse-related study courses, and the offer came up to go to a stable and learn dressage in Germany, and I thought, well, I'm not too fussed on the English weather, Germany's weather sounds a bit better. So I went over and had a look, and a 3-day trip over there, and I thought, well, it certainly looks better than where I was, so I sort of made the switch probably then. It was probably beginning of 95 when I went there, and I stayed there, and I was very happy until 97 there, so it was a good time in my life to learn, I think, and that's where the switch came. I decided that eventing, you have to have... I wasn't that brave, I don't think, for eventing. It was starting to hurt too much. I didn't have very good horses. I thought there had to be something else. It was either going to be polo, and that took too many horses, and then sort of dressage caught my eye. I thought, okay, dressage it is. So that's where it started.
All right. Well, you mentioned you were in Britain, of course, studying. That was for the British Horse Society exams, isn't it, that you got your intermediate instructor qualification there? Of course, a lot of our listeners around the world will be familiar with that system of qualification. So that stood you in good stead, did it, when you went back to Australia to have that qualification in your back pocket? Yes,
it is a very unique qualification that has been around for so many years, and it is a worldwide recognised course, which is very important because I've done most of my horsing around outside of Australia. So it's one that everyone knows, and it's proven, and it's an old qualification. I think a lot of people hold that qualification and do recognise it and still believe it is one of the best training systems there is to offer in the horse industry in the world. So I was very lucky and fortunate to have those in my pocket because it certainly opened up some doors that wouldn't have been open otherwise.
Well, I could certainly second that, having come up through the BHS ranks myself. Now, what was this with the intention of establishing yourself as an instructor at that time, Chantal, as you were making the transition?
Well, family actually started off, we had a riding school and had done for several years. So the horse industry wasn't new to us. It wasn't new to the family, and with any great mother, they tried to steer you away from it, knowing how hard it was, I think. And so I had a few different directions previous to that, but I came back to the horses in 94, and I said, no, that's the direction I want to take. And the first thing my mother said, well, you better pack your bags and go and get some qualifications because you're going to need them. So that's how I started off in England.
Now, do you come from a horsey background? Was there any interest in horses from the family?
Yes, there was, yes. We had a large Brisbane-based riding school that started in 78, 30 horses. So I'd come up through the ranks, so it wasn't that different to what I was previously doing in the horse exposure, and we had always had British staff that were employed there that had come out on various visas, and a lot of them ended up taking permanent residency through our business in Brisbane.
So you made that switch then to dressage, and tell us about that transition and how you found the horses that you needed to get a footing in that sport.
That in itself is a very difficult one. I had always ridden ex-racehorse thoroughbreds, and when I went to Europe, that became a very useful tool. It wasn't apparent to me at the beginning to how useful this was going to play out, but the horses they were breeding at that time, they were infusing a lot of thoroughbreds into their breeding system, and it was quite evident that they were having some issues with that, just due to the I suppose friability of those horses that the German training was not quite used to having in their lines. So I became, I think, very useful over there as a rider to start these horses and to probably a little bit of calming to the horses that were coming in for training because they had obviously gone a little astray with their temperaments, but that was quite a temperament I was used to, so that worked out relatively well for me. But it's hard going over there with the training as well when you start off. you go there like anyone, cleaning boxes and promise to ride 2 horses a day, and you get less boxes and more horses until you're up to 12 horses and no boxes, which is everyone's ultimate dream, I think. So the experience of dressage and the different levels of horses you ride, and some of them you stay on permanently and others you swap, is a great training facility for any young dressage rider, I believe.
Well, so many of Australian New Zealand riders do make their way to Europe for this invaluable experience in the dressage world, of course. Chantal, how did you make that transition to the German system, though? Was that a difficult one for you?
I think I was much more pliable at that age and made it relatively easily. I think it all really depends on your character and your personality of the person to whether you'll make that transition easily or not. If you've never had any formal training or tuition, I think it's a lot more difficult for you. But if you have had constant, been in the environment of a training facility, I think you can adapt relatively quickly. Obviously, the style is a lot different to the English style, but the principles are all the same.
Had you at any time sort of studied the old masters and decided that, it was the German system that you would favour as opposed to any other European system? That was, of course, before you moved to the Netherlands, because I think a lot of people, when you're discovering dressage, you're studying dressage, leading towards a particular style of training, and that goes back to the old masters, of course.
No, I didn't. I didn't study. I had heard about them and had read little bits and pieces, I suppose, of them. But I certainly didn't make a choice by studying the old masters and then finding a guru that is still following that method.
And so after Germany then, it was time to turn around and go back to Australia, was it? Or you spent a little bit of time in Netherlands first, or how did it evolve for you?
In 97, I actually came home to the family business. And I stayed home for 9 years, and I restarted a riding school and training facilities and competition barn. So I sort of did that bit, and then I said, my goal is the Olympics, and that is my goal, and I wanted to pursue that, and so I was fortunately enough that in 2006 that opportunity arose again for another trip over there to follow my dream and see what I could make. Being that a little bit older as well, it makes a difference in your outlook and perspective in things. And that's when we decided in October. We packed up with the horse on board as well and headed for Germany.
And then to the Netherlands, and you were obviously under the influence of Imke Schellekes Bartels, as you said, at the Academy Bartels in the Netherlands. How long did you spend there?
I spent 2008 there, and I was fortunate then to continue that stint with her up until Kentucky of 2010.
Right.
I did come home for a period of time in there, and I left the horse in training. And she kept that horse going for me and also competed him, and quite successfully competed him. So that's also nice that the horse that I had managed to go to some competitions while I was still home I think I was nearly home for a year and a half, I'm sure it was, and I left the horse with her.
So tell us about all the horses. You mentioned Ferraro, of course, you've been winning so much recently with down there in Australia. Tell us about the rest of the dressage horses you have at home.
I'm extremely fortunate. Ferraro is my only horse at the moment, so he gets 100% attention.
It's not spoiled, Chantal. It wouldn't be spoiled.
No, not at all.
No.
I actually don't know how I'd cope with another one. I don't know if I'd have enough time in the day.
Because you have 3 stepchildren, you said.
That's right.
So your stepmom as well as obviously in training, and which involves a lot of travelling. It's quite a hike. I would say it's just down the road, is it, to go to what was it, the Melbourne 3-day event where you won recently? That's from Queensland to Melbourne. Isn't that over? Something like over, because I've driven it myself. It's over 1,200 miles, isn't it?
Yes, it's 2,000 kilometres. Which is a road trip of 3 days.
Yeah,
with horse.
With horse, it has to be. Yeah, I've driven it the other way from Adelaide, all the way up the other way. It is quite a trek. So your pony is probably used to it. This long distance travel, though, being Australian.
He is. I think he's a pretty seasoned traveller. We had to make this trip. My other Melbourne trips have been quite long because I try to do a circuit of events, so it makes it worthwhile. You're down there for a longer period of time. This Melbourne 3-day, there was no other surrounding competitions for dressage. So we basically, Gary, my partner, dear husband, comes travelling everywhere with me. He's my support network and groom. And I have a very good friend in Victoria. And the horse went down by transport and was met by Lisa. She took care of him, and I arrived Thursday morning. And it was freezing cold, of course, coming from sunny Queensland, even though we're in winter.
Yep.
There's about 15 degrees difference in the temperature. And we started the campaign from Thursday, really. We competed on Saturday and Sunday. And then we had some problems with flights returning because we were to fly home because the children are in exam block. And need us here. But we had the volcanic ash from Chile that cancelled many flights. So unfortunately, we came on a road trip back with the horse, which became more exciting as the trip went on because we then had floodwaters rising on the border. So it took an extra day.
Gosh.
But we do have some interesting photographs going up on the blog.
I bet you do. Yeah, I bet you do. There's one for the memory books, absolutely. And it is such a long track. But now, tell us why you chose to do that. I know it was a CDIW, but it's a long way, as you said, to go for just one show. It
is. Yes, my focus for this year, 2011, of course, is to win the World Cup finals in the South Pacific region, as I did last year. I elected not to go back to Germany this year for the finals, only because I had just arrived home, and the trip is quite gruesome on all, horse and humans arriving from Europe. So my campaign this year is focusing on the World Cup qualifiers.
Of course, that's in Hertogenbosch in the Netherlands next April.
Yeah.
But you've got a few competitions along the way, haven't you, to qualify that you're going to focus on? As you said, the Australian National Championships and Equitana, isn't it? And you've got your more obviously your World Cup final for the Pacific League down there as well. So you've got quite a busy season. This year is going to be quite busy, isn't it? As you get through all your state championships.
That's right. It kicks off in October, the Nationals, and then Equitana, and then we will stay down in Victoria until December because the trip is pretty hellish coming back. And even though he's a good traveller, I don't like to go up and down 2,000 kilometres on a regular basis, so we will then stay down there until the actual finals, which is in December.
And then what would be your plan, presuming you qualify for the finals in the Netherlands next April, what would be your plans for next year? I'm guessing you've got London Olympics right in the middle of your radar.
That's exactly right, heading straight on at 12 o'clock. That is that's our plan. And so if that all goes according to my plan, which is always nice, we will head back to Bartels and train under IMCA from February.
All right. So busy. And now, does your partner and husband, both the same thing, right? Your groom, your partner is the all-in-one. He's the man Friday, isn't he?
He is my man Friday.
Yeah, or any day of the week in your case, I'm sure.
That's true.
Now,
yes.
Does he get to travel with you and have to leave the children behind?
His travel trips are usually shorter than mine are. He stays with the children most of the time and flies down for the events if I'm doing these long stints away. So he sort of flies into wherever the shows are to be my groom and my mental preparation. He assists in that. Not a mentor because he doesn't come from a riding background or a horsey background. He's been quite spoilt though because he's only really got involved with my horsing around, so to speak, when we went to Europe. So he's been fairly blessed in what he's seen. As he says, what are these things? It's like, don't worry, we don't need to know.
Enjoying life at the top end of the sport now. What's his name? We should give him a name.
Gary.
And
Gary,
and
yes.
your stepchildren?
3 of them, Jack, Rachel and Charlie.
Right. And now, any interest there in the horses? Are they following your lead here?
Many years ago, they picked it up for, I'd say, a 6-month stint, and they decided that was all going to be too much dedication and time, and they opted out pretty early on, which we can't say we're sad about. So no horses for them.
So do you have any spare time to do anything else, or is that your main focus? Do you do any teaching at all now? Because obviously you're a qualified instructor, Chantal.
Yes, I do teaching. That keeps me on the go and take a few horses in, maximum of 2 horses at a time for training.
Right.
So I'm not going to break myself riding other people's horses, and really you only ride 4 horses a day well, and after that I've done the 12 horses. Yeah. I know what effort's applied after the 4.
Yes.
It's not a lot. They're ridden in order of priority usually, so yep. I like to make all of my work a priority. So I only have a maximum of 4, but 3 horses is great to ride, and then you're in for the long haul with that number.
Now, talking about the long haul, as you said, your boy's getting on there in years. How much more mileage do you think you've got with him?
Oh, look, he's got an amazing amount of mileage, even at his age, still left. I think he's been always looked after well and not had to do a lot of miles because he is naturally talented. And I think that is the difference between the Grand Prix horses that are still going at 17 to 20. If they've been gifted, they haven't had to do that many miles. So they do last. It's unfortunately the ones that aren't that gifted that have had to be lap after lap to get it correct. They're certainly the ones that wear down quicker.
Well, he's had obviously a fantastic run with one win after the other, three in a row now. So what next for him? Presumably he has a little bit of a break at home. Where do you go next?
We've got a good break now, actually, till October, and then October is our first nationals, so We'll be down there for that in Sydney.
Yeah, so we really have a good break, and that gives you a bit of a break too. Do you get a vacation time? What does vacation mean to you and Gary?
Vacation, we're still looking for the meaning of vacation, actually.
Like most riders.
Haven't seen that since 2006. So.
All right.
It's a new word. We'll find it one day. He keeps promising me we will find it. No, I'm very optimistic on that.
Well, a lot of our listeners around the world will be saying, well, gosh, if I lived in that part of Queensland, my Brisbane there, with all that surf on your doorstep, and that sand, that's a pretty good vacation location, isn't it?
It is a very good location, yes.
Well, Chantal, I want to wish you the very best of luck with the rest of this season, your preparation and your objectives there of making it to the London Olympic Games. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Well, nice to hear from her. We wish her all the very best of luck. And as we said, there's so much travelling involved with Australian shows. Now, wherever you're based, give us a sense, Brett, of now where those shows are going to be happening, the big shows. You said it starts up again in September for you with Victory Salute.
Yeah, so there's a state championship, so New South Wales State Championships, which would be one of the biggest shows here, that's going to be up in a town called Tamworth this year, which is renowned for the Western sports. So it's a bit of a movement to try and take dressage into the western parts of Australia, and they have a wonderful facility up there. So that's where the state championships will be. Now, Victory Salute won't go to that. I'll take some younger horses to that one. Then we have our national championships in October, which is coincidentally the regional qualifier for our Olympic team qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when the New Zealanders will come over to here, and what they've done, the FEI, is they've broken the qualifier up into two sections. So there'll be a qualifier in Holland, and that's where possibly some of the Japanese riders will ride, and maybe one or two of our combinations. I'm not sure. This is all just a little bit, hasn't been organised yet, but then the second leg of the qualifier will be out here at the National Championships. So we have to make sure, both Rachel and I and whoever else is involved with the team, that we are at our best for that show, because, I mean, we don't want to take anything for granted that we're going to be going to the Olympics, so we have to win that. That's in the end of October, and then we have November Equitana, which is going to be very big this year. This is probably the biggest Equitana yet. The EA Federation, has come up with a concept of a grand final, and they're selling this grand final concept across all three Olympic disciplines to be at Equitana, which should be great. You know, it'll be a whole new thing to be involved with, and there's good money up and good sponsorships and good exposure. So we want to be on our game for that. And then at the start of December, there'll be this World Cup final for our region, which the winner of that gets the ticket to go to the World Cup final in Den Bosch next year. So that's 3 solid months of competing that we need to be ready for at the end of the year. So, but it's funny when you talk about distance. I mean, all of those, apart from the Tamworth show, but the rest of those shows are within sort of 7 hours of our place. So Sydney's for me is an hour and a half, which is not too far. And then Melbourne's only a bit over 7 hours down there. This week when I get to Europe, I'm hopping off the plane. So I get on the plane this afternoon. I fly over and I get off the plane Friday morning in Holland and drive straight out to Edward and Hans-Peter and Nicole's stable and have a ride on Lord of Loxley, and then leave on the Tuesday and drive down to Pompadour, which last time I looked was about 1,200 kilometres. So, distance for us is big too, but, a lot of the European guys do a lot of distance. I was talking to Gareth Hughes. He's off to Fritzon's this weekend. We're not the only ones doing the big distances at the moment.
And of course around Europe, yes, you can soon cover some ground in Europe, can't you? Well, we're going to talk about your program coming up for the next few weeks. As you said, you've got a show almost immediately as you hit the ground. You're going to hit the ground running. So we'll talk about that and what else you're going to be doing in Europe while you're there, apart from enjoying the cuisine, as no doubt you will, and fine wine. First of all, let me just remind everybody about Equestrian Collections, one of our valued sponsors here, because you can earn points for you and the riding organisation of your choice by joining the Equestrian Collections rewards program that rewards its valued customers and supports the equestrian community. For every $1 you spend at Equestrian Collections, you will earn 1 point, and each time you accumulate 500 points, you'll receive a $25 reward certificate, which is, of course, redeemable at Equestrian Collections. And you can also collect rewards for your horse by celebrating his birthday with a $10 reward certificate that will be emailed to you during the month of your horse's birthday, and that, of course, redeemable at equestriancollections.com. And you can find out all your dressage brands, all your favourite dressage brands are like Romph International, Kerritts, Fitz and Good Rider. They're all at equestriancollections.com, which has everything dressage for both you and your horse. Check them out, equestriancollections.com, and we'd like to thank them too for being a participating retailer of the Horse World Gives Back campaign. Well, my co-host this week, Brett Parbury, is hot-footing it to the Northern Hemisphere momentarily, so I'm glad you could spend a few minutes with us before you leave, Brett, because you've got a busy few weeks. Tell us all that's going to be happening once you get to Europe, apart from your first French show, of course. Now, when was the last time you sat on Lord of Loxley?
I last sat on Lord of Loxley in March, just before I came back through Japan, actually, through the earthquake. So It was March. The plan is going to be because I'm coming from Australia to Europe, I want to try and fit as many shows in as possible. So I'm going to arrive in Holland on Friday, have a quick ride Friday mid-morning with Edward, and then Saturday ride again, Sunday again, Monday again, and then hopefully get a good feel for him. I mean, the one good thing with Edward Gull's horses is they're rideable by anybody, so I have no doubt that I can get on and ride the horse. And I'm only taking him small tour too, so the pressure's not so great. So then I'll head off on Tuesday down to Pompadour, and Nicole Werner has kindly found a truck for me to rent, so I'll jump in this truck and head down to Pompadour in France. It'll be my first French show, actually, and I must say that the organising committee in Pompadour have been fantastic. They've just done whatever they can to help me, as far as stabling, and I'll have a groom, and they've found me accommodation, and they've been just great for us. So we'll go down to Pompadour, do the show down there, see how it goes. I mean, it's been a while since Lord of Loxley's been to a show. Edward took him to Zwolle and did a masterclass on him, and he also took him to the Global Forum and did the exhibition there. But it's been a while since he's been to a show, so I mean, we're really using this as a learning experience to see what he's like. The reason for going to France is one, it's one of the only CDIs on for me at that time. Two, I wanted a smaller CDI that I didn't have to deal with big crowds and big atmosphere. And then three, being an Australian rider, I have to, apart from getting a national license, I have to compete in CDIs. So if I wanted to get a national license and compete in Dutch small shows, I could do that. But from the calendar, I didn't think there was any shows on. So, yeah, down to Pompadour, do that show, see how we go. If it all goes well and he feels rideable in the competition arena and everything goes nicely, I have the option to go back and go to Aachen. The organisers at Aachen said that I could come to Aachen if I can prove that the horse is up to standard at Pompadour. If things don't go as well as planned, or if I get a doubt in my mind about Aachen, I'll then go to Vierzon the week after in Pompadour, so I'll stay an extra week in France and then come back. And then, regardless of whether I compete in Aachen or not, I have a coaching role there with the Australian eventing team. So I'll be there coaching the Australian eventers. And then I think it's back to then Haaskamp in Holland with Edward and Nicole and Hans-Peter for 10 days, and then we head over to Hickstead, and we do Hickstead at the end of July. And again, another great organising committee. They've just been fantastic in accommodating us. And then back home. So then I'll fly home on the 2nd of August. So hopefully with a bit more knowledge of what Lord of Loxley's like in the competitions.
Well, that sounds a really fun trip, all around a whirlwind trip, but what a lot of fun. Now, you'll just have him to ride, so will you ride other horses while you're there? Will you get the opportunity to sit on anything else, Brett?
Oh, look, there's always the chance to sit on horses at Edward and Hans-Peter's. I mean, they Hans-Peter, I often give him a hand to ride some of his horses because he has quite a few and the whole thing. But, I mean, there's only really 10 days I'm going to be back in Holland. The rest of the time, if things go well, I'll be down at the show. So I'll only be in Holland for probably, 3 or 4 days at a time in amongst those big shows up until the end of Aachen. And then during that 10 days that I'm in Holland, I'll probably give Hans-Peter a hand and ride whatever he throws at me.
And no doubt you'll enjoy some European cuisine from the Netherlands to France, of course, and then to England. A bit of everything, fish and chips, all the way to mussels and pomfrets. And
yeah, yeah. No, I love my food too, so I'll definitely give them all a try.
You'll enjoy that, and we know how Hans-Peter and Edward love their sushi too, so I'm sure there'll be some of that involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, talking about sushi, do you have any plans to go back to Japan anytime soon, Brett, later this year?
Not anytime soon, no. the thing that I do in Japan is usually only an annual thing, so there's been no talk of me going. I really enjoyed my trip there last time, so if they wish me to go again next year, I'll more than be happy to do it.
Terrific. Well, you have to tell us about that if you do go. We love to include all these other countries, of course, that are, trying to develop the sport in their country. So if you have anyone from Japan, if you're listening and would like to come on the Dressage radio show and tell us about how you're growing the sport back home, we would love to hear from you. Well, Brett, we're just about coming to the end of the show this week, but not before we get to our new segment here on the show, Words of Wisdom. The backward movement. Being behind the curb or having the movement backward is one and the same thing, and ought never, not for the fraction of a second, to be allowed in a horse, whether he be in any motion, inclusive of backing, or even when he is merely standing still. We have already seen how the horse manifests the movement backward at the stand. Once the rider has experienced it at the stand, he will, with the development of a slightly keener analytical feeling, recognise its presence at the walk, but especially at the trot and canter. At the gallop, there is less tendency for a horse to get behind the hand and consequently to have the movement backward. Yet it occurs. In order to tentatively essay giving the reader an idea of how the horse manifests the movement backward while in motion, in other words, how he fails to go up to the curb, and in order to try to make a novice rider at first guess, probably more than understand, what it feels like, a little experiment must be suggested. The learner, being then on foot and walking erect, will first stiffen the upper part of the back and the top of the shoulders. He will thereby feel that, although he will be moving, he is actually opposing his own motion, just as if he were resisting somebody else's push from behind. When doing this, he will have, just like the horse, the movement backward, although he will be walking or even running forward. When done by the horse, this is technically termed not going up to the curb, or having the movement backward. Contrarily, if the learner while walking will, without in any way diminishing the erectness of the torso, lighten the top of the back and of the shoulders, he will increase this movement forward, and yet not be increasing speed, perhaps not even moving from a given spot. When a horse does this, he is said to go up to his curb, or to have the forward movement. So when the rider feels his mount's shoulders stiffening a little between the withers, or let us say from the middle of the neck to under the pommel of the saddle, he will know that the animal lacks movement forward. In other words, that he is not going up to the curb. This extract is taken from Principles of Equitation by Barreto de Souza and published in New York by E.P. Dutton and Company, Inc. in 1922. And I also want to remind you about our young reporters out there. If you're under 20 years of age and would like to come on the show and tell us about your show in your area, and it can be anywhere in the world, just email me, chris@horseradionetwork.com. So, Brett, in just a few minutes, you'll be on your way to the airport. That's the story, and that's why we're recording this a little bit earlier this week. And this will be, of course, for next week's show as we speak. I had to get you before you got on the plane because otherwise you wouldn't have had time once you get to Europe. But we're literally hitting the ground running, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it feels like, I keep saying, it feels like I'm on that television show, The Amazing Race, flying through airports and packing bags and throwing them into cars and madly trying to navigate through countries. So, yeah, it's all good.
It's all good. Well, the very best of luck. I hope you have a great trip. I hope the airlines are kind to you and safe travels, of course. And enjoy the food. Think about us when you're knocking back your champagne and enjoying the French cuisine.
Oh, thank you. I will do.
And come back on the show in a few weeks and tell us how it all went after you get back to Australia.
Yeah, will do, Chris. Thank you very
All right,
much.
Wonderful. Well, I want to remind everybody here, you can follow our show notes, of course, at dressageradio.com, and there's also a link to horseworldgivesback.com where you can participate in that campaign to raise money for those less fortunate that have been subjected to, of course, extreme conditions in the US over the past few months. That campaign is ongoing here at the Horse Radio Network. And all the links to everything that we talk about here on the show are on our website, and you can also join our conversation over on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, Chris E. Stafford and Horse Radio. Don't forget my email, chris@horseradionetwork.com, if you have any comments, questions or suggestions. And I will be back here, of course, the same time, same place next week. So until then, thank you all for listening.